Investigators in Germany have found that hundreds of boys were subjected to physical and sexual abuse at a Catholic choir school over a period of 70 years. And the report has criticised George Ratzinger, the brother of the former Pope, who ran the school for much of that time but failed to intervene. Anne Barker has our report.
The Regensburg Cathedral Sparrows are said to be the oldest choir in the world. They're an institution in Bavaria where the famous Catholic choir school was established more than 1,000 years ago. But it's the last 70 years that are now threatening the school's reputation. An independent investigation has found that teachers at the school physically and sexually abused nearly 550 students in the years after World War II. And one former choir boy and a victim himself, Alexander Probst, says many are still dealing with the impact of the abuse today.
These are
not 547 separate cases where an individual was affected once. Rather, this was an ongoing practice over decades, where 547 people, children, were tormented, abused and mistreated, and remain severely traumatised to this day.
A 440-page report of the investigation released this week documents systemic abuse against boys as young as 10. It says boys were regularly beaten with wooden sticks and even violin bows, or slapped on the face so hard the marks were still visible the next day. Boys who tried to escape were hauled back into school and beaten or humiliated in front of other students. Ulrich Weber is the lawyer who carried out the investigation. These institutions were described by the victims as prison, hell and concentration camp, he says. Many of them described this time as the worst of their life, dominated by violence, fear and helplessness. Some of the worst offences occurred in the years when the choir was run by Georg Ratzinger, the brother of former Pope Benedict. He's admitted he knew of the allegations of physical abuse and even slapped students himself, but he denies knowledge of sexual abuse. The report criticises Ratzinger for turning a blind eye, though Ulrich Weber says nearly 50 teachers and non-teaching staff were involved, though none is likely to be prosecuted because of the time that's elapsed. Based on the victims' reports and other sources, a total of 49 perpetrators were assessed, with a high degree of plausibility. 45 of them committed physical violence and 9 of them sexual abuse. It's not the only scandal embroiling the Catholic Church this week. In the Vatican, 2 former executives who ran the Pope's Children's Hospital are standing trial, accused of diverting more than $500,000 to renovate the apartment of a top cardinal. Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, once the Vatican's number 2, hasn't been charged himself, even though he benefited from the funds. He's since paid a €150,000 donation for hospital research, but insists it's in no way repayment for the embezzled funds. Reporter Nicole Winfield from America's Associated Press is following the trial.
This trial comes at a difficult time for Pope Francis. He was elected to reform the finances of the Vatican, and this is a clear example of how that effort is necessary. As far as the tribunal is concerned, this was a case of embezzlement. That money that belonged to the Vatican Hospital was taken and used for ends that weren't justified. This is a prime example of some of the cleanup that Pope Francis wants to do.
The 2 men on trial have sought to have the case dismissed, but the Vatican court has adjourned the case until September.
Anne Barker with that report.